Children who are exposed to so-called conversion therapy face higher rates of attempted suicide and trauma. Again, the data that he is attempting to cite here, no footnotes, I've noticed. Numerous states across the country have already passed bipartisan...
I'm sorry, do you have the data, Ben? Are you just going to, just claim that? You're just going to hand wave it, right? And just hope that your audience is never like, hey, Ben, can you give us a link to that data?
Laws to prevent exposure to so-called conversion therapy, with Republican and Democratic governors signing state bans on conversion therapy into law. Yet despite these efforts, many people in the United States and around the world are still subjected to this practice. Again, bans have been signed with regard to, electrifying kids. However, bans typically are a bad idea when you're talking about a kid questioning their sexual orientation or gender identity.
Do you think that he's right about that? Do you think that bans in place on electrifying children is true? Let's look this up real quick. Uh-oh. What is this? Abuse is not the answer. Shut down the Judge Rottenberg Center. Let's just move on to Shapiro and see what he has to say.
Completely woke.
God, he always looks constipated. He looks like an out of shape Dragon Ball Z villain that is trying to power up, but just can never quite reach it. So he's constantly sitting there, angry and making grunting constipation noises, but never quite being able to drop that load.
By the way, I recommend that you check out our sports podcast here at Daily Wire, Crane and Company. It's available everywhere, and it is not a woke sports podcast. The reason I bring this...
Oh, he's advertising a non-woke sports podcast, so he's going to bring it up for...
...is because there is massive controversy that is now broken out because some of the players on the Tampa Bay Rays refuse to wear LGBTQ plus minus divided by sign, ampersand, percentage sign, dollar sign, hashtag emoji face.
Could you imagine if you were so brain dead you couldn't remember LGBT plus? You just had to randomly spit out random letters and emojis or whatever else. If that's the best joke that you've got is just purposely trying to butcher an acronym, who's watching this and be like, that's a funny joke right there.
Insignias on their uniform because they are either religious Christians or they do not believe in the LGBTQ plus minus divided by sign agenda. And
darn it, he does it on a toilet. He's literally, there's a toilet, he's sitting on a bidet as he's playing. Look at him, he's while he's doing it,
And this means that they are bigots. Jason Adam is one of those players. He said, "It's a hard decision. Ultimately, we all said what we want is them to know that all are welcome and loved here. But when we put it on our bodies, I think a lot of guys decided it's just a lifestyle that maybe, not that they look down on anybody or think differently. It's just that maybe we don't want to encourage it. If we believe in Jesus, who's encouraged us to live a lifestyle that would abstain from that behavior." Why this is even remotely controversial is beyond me.
Well, let's see. It's during Pride Month. We have an unprecedented amount of LGBT bigotry and hatred on the rise in this country, including tons of laws being passed against our community. As I pulled up earlier, you can go to the ACLU anti-trans website and you can see the hundreds of bills that they're passing against our community. And let's think here. Sporting event where a lot of people are going to be watching, and it's very often that sporting events endorse all sorts of things, whether it's the Colin Kaepernick thing of kneeling as a political statement, whether it's the history of Muhammad Ali getting political. Politics and sports go hand in hand, and they have forever. So yeah, if someone's hey, we've got these pins during Pride Month, and you could put a little pin on your uniform. And I was already familiar with the players, at least, doing this. There's 5 of them. And it's yeah, it's a little noteworthy because it's weird for the players to say, we totally support and want everybody to be here with love, except we don't support that lifestyle because of Jesus. And it's well, wait a minute, you're conflating the intrinsic traits of these people of being LGBT as a quote unquote lifestyle, which makes it sound like some type of flippant choice.
So in other words, the most tolerant of people on the left are very upset that there are people who are not even trying to stop them from acting in the ways they want, but aren't going to celebrate their behavior by wearing an arm patch that says this thing. By the way, I should note here that as an Orthodox Jew, like if I were called upon by a corporation to put on an LGBTQ pride patch as a religious matter, that is indistinguishable from my organization telling me I need to put on a cross.
I'm sorry. I wasn't aware that LGBT people. I wasn't aware that was a religion, or that we had any type of unified like holy symbols or anything like that. Because otherwise, this is like a weird false equivalency going on here, where it's like if I was told that I had to put on a religious symbol, it's like, yeah, I guess it's a good thing that like pride merchandise and pride colors is not a religious symbol, dipshit.
From a philosophical perspective, that is indistinguishable from that corporation saying that I need to fly a swastika flag. Not because all of those things are equivalent. Jesus is not equivalent to the swastika, which is not equivalent to the LGBTQ pride flag.
I love the fact that he immediately is like, makes an analogy, and then he's like, well, that's not equivalent. The fuck's the point of an analogy, Ben? It's to connect things that are like, you know, very similar or very parallel. And I like the fact that he chose a swastika flag, so a Nazi flag, and he's like puts it with Christianity, but now he knows that. Look at his face too. Sorry, he knows that he's about to lose like his conservative audience, because he's like, if I had to wear a cross, and it'd be just like wearing having to fly a swastika, and all the rednecks are like, yeah, wait, what? And he's like, no, I mean like for the gays, like for the gay thing that I was talking about, and it's like, the gay what? Some token that the sport decided to hand out to their players that was an optional thing that they could wear or not. But it was just a hypocrisy of these athletes to say, we support this community, we just refuse to represent them in any type of way. That's what the issue is. It's not that they're not like having fealty to the LGBT religion. Jesus.
The point is that if something contravenes my deeply held worldview, including my religious beliefs, forcing me to wear an insignia celebrating that thing is wrong. And I would expect the same from...
Wait, they weren't forced. They literally had an option and they said no. And that's what the controversy is, right? So they weren't forced to do it then.
People on the left. And if somebody's on the left and their corporation said to them, you must put a cross on your uniform. And they said no. They would be perfectly well within their rights to do so.
It's not a religion. Like, it makes me so mad that this is supposed to be like one of the brainchilds of the right wing. Like, he was like the boy genius, and he's always facts over feelings, and you know, how come I can change my gender, but I can't change my age, ha ha ha, type of thing. This is supposed to be like the big brain guy that goes to universities and like pwns and destroys college kids. And this is literally him in his lair, in his like little Daily Wire cozy thing, in his own studio and shit. He had all the time in the world to think about this, and this is what he comes up with. This dude is an idiot.
Or a swastika on their uniform. They would be perfectly well within their rights to do so. Or a Jewish star. Like, it should be that you do not...
It should be. He's literally getting lost in his own rhetoric.
Not have to wear the insignia of a thing you don't believe in. And I thought, by the way, that this is exactly the argument that the left had with regard to Colin Kaepernick. And that Colin Kaepernick was allowed to kneel for the national anthem. Like, this is actually worse, okay? And the reason this is actually worse is because every sporting event opens with the national anthem. And I'm sorry to tell you this, but the national anthem ought to be more unifying in the United States of America than the LGBTQ pride flag.
If you're a nationalist, right? You're missing something there, Ben. When you say like, oh, this is, first of all, the national anthem is political. Like, I don't understand what this point is. It ought to be more unifying only to a nationalist. Only if you had some type of like pride, like national pride in the flag. And I would just say like, just for the record, I don't think that anybody should have to like have fealty to any flag. Fuck flags. They're just a symbol, and the symbol is supposed to represent something else, right? It's abstract concepts. And when we talk about like the flag that represents the United States of America, I mean, I don't know. I just feel for some reason that I should not necessarily have a lot of fealty to that flag right now, when a large portion of this country, backed by politicians, is trying to strip away my rights, trying to oppress me, and I don't know, oppress other minority communities, the systemic and historic horrific abuse of the black community. and every other minority within this country. If you want me to like recognize that flag as like a unifying symbol for everybody, it needs to represent everybody, and in a way that encourages like, actual equanimity between people, equality. It needs to be an egalitarian type flag, not a flag that represents bombing other countries for their oil, doing like colonialism. The flag is way more divisive than ever used to be, especially because it's appropriated by right-wing activists that want to literally, January 6th, commit insurrections against this country. Then people like him are running apologia for those groups and talking about like, oh, those were, just a minor riot, like nothing really major happened. And that flag ought to be a unifying symbol. No, only because he wants to push nationalism onto you. And he wants you to agree that nationalism is a good thing without acknowledging that that is a political point of the conservatives.
It ought to be. You know why? Because it turns out that the LGBTQ agenda is quite radical, and a huge percentage of the population does not support either any element or every element of that.
All right, the LGBT movement is a radical movement, and there are some people that don't support any. We're aware that there are lots of you chuds that do not support any element of our movement, no matter what. And that's why I try to point out to some people that are just hell-bent on being like, well, there are some conservative LGBT people. Yeah, but they are doing that like literally, they're just being useful idiots to the Republicans that do not support any aspect of the LGBT community, which would include those people as well. We already know that. We don't need you to point that out to us.
That agenda. The American flag, I thought that...
And there's no agenda, by the way. It's just our existence. I would like to live peacefully and not be trampled upon, like unhindered, and my bodily autonomy left alone. That's what I would like. And that's the radical agenda that we must all commonly share.
That's the thing that we are all supposed to be as Americans. I wasn't aware that we all have to be LGBTQ plus minus divided by sign activists. But apparently we do.
Wearing a pride pin, or wearing like a company like logo on something, like if you're sponsored or whatever, that's not you being an activist for them, by the way, Ben. I don't think like when I ever watch like UFC, I don't think like when when they come out there to fight, that the fighters have like corporate sponsors on their shorts and stuff. I don't think they're like Jimmy John's activists. I think that they just have an endorsement.
According to ESPN reporter Sarah Spain, she said that if you don't wear the flag, not even that you're discriminating against gay people, not even that you're saying that being gay is bad, not any of that. If you refuse to celebrate, if you refuse to cheer, this means that you're a bigot. If you opted out of wearing a Pride Night patch on your uniform, this is because you're a bigot. So
I don't know if they had like a Jewish history night or something, and they're like, hey, we're going to hand out like little stars of David or something that you can put. I think Shapiro would be calling out some anti-Semitism if one of the teams had like a cluster of players that were like, look, we're fine with Jewish people, but we are not showing any type of representation for them. Like, fuck that. I don't support that lifestyle. I think he would correctly say, that sounds a little anti-Semitic.
In other words, opting not to stand for the national anthem, heroism, and valor. Opting not to wear a pride patch.
Wait, to stand for the national anthem, heroism, and valor, once again, smuggling in nationalist talking points. Not only is the flag a representative of nationalism in the country, it also now has to also represent heroism and valor, but none of the negative things that could be associated with it.
Bigotry and cruelty. Here is the ESPN reporter, Sarah Spain.
Pride is about...
Wait. Hold on, I'm going to go back 1 second. Right, so we're going to pause it. All right, so here we can see the little symbol. It definitely looks like a little pin. It says, so it's a hard decision. This is the quote of what he read earlier. It's a hard decision because ultimately we all said what we want is them to know that they are all welcome and loved here. Okay, so this is the guy one of them that refused it. So he's now, we want them to know is that they are all welcome and all loved. But so there you go. When we put it on our bodies, first of all, it's the uniform, just like any other logo or any other celebration where you're like, oh, we're going to like put on, I don't know, winter colors for, a game that's close to Christmas or something like that. Like, they do this shit all the time for corporate sponsors or whatever, which I guess, hey, if it's your corporate masters, that's fine. If it comes to supporting human rights, even as nothing but a virtue signal, then that's an issue. Although, to be frank, I don't give a shit whether they wear like pride stuff or not. It's just the comments is what the issue is. So they say, but when we put it on our bodies, I think a lot of guys decided that it's just a lifestyle. So right there, I think a lot of guys decided that it's just a lifestyle. So it's no longer about supporting the intrinsic traits of somebody. Now it's being dismissed as a lifestyle. That maybe, not that they look down on anybody or think differently, it's just that maybe we don't want to encourage it being people being gay. If we believe in Jesus, who's encouraged us to live a lifestyle that would abstain from that behavior. So the problem is in that language right there, where they're turning being gay, something that is intrinsic to somebody's sexuality, right? And turning that into a lifestyle that is not only arbitrary, that is something that they wouldn't want to encourage. So now they're insinuating that there's something wrong with being that way. That's the controversy, Ben. Not because they wouldn't wear a fucking pendant, but because they said that shit.
Pride is about inclusion, so you don't love them and you don't welcome them if you're not willing to wear the patch. And calling it a lifestyle reveals to me that you've done not even a modicum of research or understanding on this topic, which is what tends to happen when a privileged class isn't affected by things. This is not just about baseball. That religious exemption BS, which is used in sport and otherwise, also allows for people to be denied health care, jobs, apartments, children, prescriptions, all sorts of rights. And so we have to stop tiptoeing around it because we're trying to protect people who are trying to be bigoted from asking for them to be exempt from it when the very people that they are bigoted against are suffering the consequences.
So basically, there's
Based. Everything that she said was based. All right. Ben is going to look at him. He's so smug. Like, he thinks he's like, oh, I'm going to totally pull this apart.
should be no religious exemptions ever, right? There should be no religious exemptions whatsoever because, of course, why should there be? They're all bigots. It's all cover for bigotry.
No, but I mean, I would like him to answer that. Why would there be religious exemptions for certain things, but I couldn't use other portions of my identity? And by the way, religion is an arbitrary form. I don't even think it should be necessarily treated with the same seriousness of intrinsic traits, because people convert and deconvert from religions all the time. You're not born in as a certain religion. Like, you're not born a Christian, born a Judaism is a little more complicated because there's an ethnic component to it. But like Buddhism and stuff like that, like, you're not born that way. You are converted into it. So it does seem weird to me. And I've heard some legal experts argue that religion shouldn't be considered the same type of protected class as race or whatever. And I do agree with that. But for whatever reason, in upside down America, religious beliefs are treated with more seriousness and have way more protections under the law than any other type of possible identity.
Now, the truth is that the people who are calling the Christians bigots are the actual bigots. Those Christians are not attempting.
Okay, so Darvo, like, flat out right here, right? So it's defend yourself, then you attack your opponents, then you reverse the victim and oppressor, where not only do you play the victim, but you also you make yourself into the victim while you blame the victim for your oppression. And that's literally what he just did right there.
Attempting to force anything on Sarah Spain. Sarah Spain is attempting to force them to wear emblems on their uniforms that they do not wish to wear.
No one is forcing them to wear anything, Ben. It was optional. The problem is what they said of why they wouldn't wear it. That's the issue. It would be like if they had offered to wear, like, Star of David, and then the players just said, like, oh no, we have the option, we just choose not to wear that. I don't know if there would even be a controversy about that. Now, if 5 players turned down wearing it and they said some anti-Semitic stuff about, like, they don't know if they want to represent that type of group of people, that sort of thing, I think that you'd very easily say that's anti-Semitism, and you wouldn't hesitate 1 second, regardless of whether they claimed they had a religious exemption, not to wear it. The exemption is not the question. The question is the following statements that they made about the community. But of course, he's trying to obfuscate that.
Who's the bigot here? Exactly. But it just demonstrates that from a left-wing worldview, they really believe this. They believe on the left wing that the pride flag is more unifying for America. It more represents America than the American flag does. The American flag is a symbol of repression and societal racism and bigotry and historical discrimination. The pride flag is something...
Hey, at least he understands why, a lot of us are like, no, we're not going to kneel for that flag. So he does understand it. But yeah, as Taurus had said, jingoism is his name. Oh, absolutely. He's just like totally huffing nationalism, which is that's what he wants to sell that as. He wants to whitewash everything.
Something we should all be proud of, because after all, it's who we are. It's an agenda that stands for tolerance and acceptance. And the more stripes and shapes and colors and weird design graphic problems we have on the flag, the more tolerant and open we are. But if you disagree with it, you're a bigot. Right? You're the problem. This says something rather deep about our culture. It also says something about the sports media, because guess what? There are a lot of sports fans who are not into Pride Night when it comes to the baseball game. They just want to go to a damned baseball game.
Who cares? Like, they don't, what if somebody wants to watch sports and they don't want to see ads on the TV, Ben? What if they don't want to see corporate media sponsors all over NASCAR? So it looks like there's a bunch of like literal corporate boxes driving around competing against each other. What if they don't want to see like the Jimmy John sponsors on UFC fighters and that type of thing? That wouldn't matter, right? Because you'd say, well, they just are paying for that product. And because he's a firm believer in free markets, they could just go elsewhere or not buy the product. So I'm not going to buy they don't want to see it. That was never part of this. All right. You can't say, well, they had a right of bodily autonomy not to put it on their body. They could have had religious exemptions or whatever else. And now he's trying to like shift it to the audience doesn't really want to see it. And it's like, dude, like, defend a point or demonstrate it instead of just hopping all over the place.
Like, the fact that all of this has become political is she talks about the privileged few in our society. You know who the privileged class are? The privileged class are a bunch of left-wing reporters living in New York and LA who think that the Alabama football game has to be graced by Pride Night because they have very strong feelings about Obergefell or about transgenderism.
So now he's conflating like the Obergefell decision along with trans people, then who his audience has already been primed to dislike. And now he's also throwing the media in there, pretending that all media are essentially like, upper echelon, left wing, New York, highfalutin type of people. This is part of the whole anti-intellectualism that goes on the right, where they'll pretend that people like Matt Walsh have a lot of credibility and they're asking tough questions and they're good journalists, but all of the reporters and media that they disagree with are all out of touch, ultra wealthy, living in penthouse reporters or something that are just pushing narratives onto you. And not only are they bad, but he continuously is going to retie them back to don't forget to hate trans people and LGBT people on top of this.
Like that, it's so self-centered. It's so narcissistic. Again, they take all the things that are apolitical and that we could share and they politicize them. And then when you say no, they say that you're being a bigot. I mean, by the way, I think that there's a case to be made that even if you are pro-LGBTQ agenda, you should say, I don't feel like wearing a pride flag on my baseball uniform because I'm playing a baseball game. And that has nothing to do with the political agenda of any side or every side. But to say even that makes you a bigot, according to Sarah Spain. It's amazing stuff. And again,
all right, I'm sorry. Let's, I'm going to pull something out real quick because I cannot believe, like, I just heard him say something like that stupid. Did y'all, like, pick up on the same thing that he was saying at the end there, right? He's complaining that just play baseball. I don't want to see politics or whatever else. Politics and sports have been tied together for a very long time. And I like the fact that, he had mentioned Kaepernick and talking about the flag should be the unifying thing. Look at a quick search on Wikipedia, politics and sports, and it pulls up this gigantic ass article. And we can just look at all the different things. Let's go to the United States. All right, and we can start right here. So in 2016, San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick sat during the national anthem in protest of police violence, which led to widespread controversy surrounding the national anthem. During the 2016 season and onward, many NFL players and from all 32 NFL teams protested during the national anthem due to police brutality, race equality, and other controversies around the nation surrounding politics and authority. When I was like 15 or so, I was at a hockey game and the national anthem came on, and I just decided like I was just going to stay seated because I literally just did not feel like getting up. And I also kind of felt like, fuck this, I'm not going to like keep pledging fealty to a piece of cloth for no reason. And I remember even back then, so we're talking like 16 years ago or something, somebody stood up nearby and yelled at me to stand up. And then when I told this guy like basically like, piss off, he was like, oh, he threatened to come over there and quote unquote like make me stand up. Then I was like, you can do that and go in and get yourself arrested for assaulting a minor. And when I first saw Kaepernick kneeling, I just thought like, okay, well, he's definitely making a political statement about this, and that made me want to pay attention. I did not think like we need to go down there like force him to stand up, or like Donald Trump did, who once again, cancel culture, was talking about that, you know, that they should I think he tweeted out, quote unquote, fire his ass. So totally trying to cancel Kaepernick's career for this. Now, Shapiro will say like, oh, it's never been this way, it shouldn't be this way, or whatever. It's the woke agenda, it's LGBT stuff, right? So we can go back to 2002 now, so 2002. The U.S. State Department initiated a sports exchange program entitled Sports United to encourage dialogue between children from the ages of 7 to 17. And it was seeking to bring together international students with their counterparts in the U.S. to establish links with American professional athletes and to expose them to American culture. This also allowed U.S. athletes to travel and learn more about blah. Sports United is participating in 15 different sports in nearly 70 countries. So I don't see how like he can make this brain dead argument that sports and politics don't go together, right? And we can just keep going back and go through the history. 2010. Let's see here. We can go a little bit earlier. Oh, look, fans of NASCAR are generally considered by the media to fall within Republican base as almost exclusively white conservative racing crowd. The white middle-aged working class Southern men who were coveted in the first decades of the 21st century during electoral campaigns. So Joe Gibbons, a NASCAR team owner, spoke at the 2008 Republican National Convention. Almost 90% of political contributions from those affiliated with NASCAR go to Republican candidates. So I just want to establish real quick, I think very obvious that politics and sports very clearly go together. It's been going on forever. You can go back and look at like when the Nazis had endorsed literally a white athlete fighting Joe Louis back in the 30s, and literally Hitler was sending the guy like congratulations when he won a match against Louis. And then like this shit's been going on for a very long time. And for Ben to pretend that, oh, people just want to watch a sport or whatever. No, the fuck they don't. Political messaging has always been part of it. It's always been there. It's been ubiquitous. And he only cares about it when, once again, just like Walsh, it's not saying the narrative that he wants it to say. Then he has an issue with it. Fuck Ben. Hypocrite. All right. So we're going to shift over from that Shapiro video right into another one because, I mean, might as well go for like 2 for 2, right?
Are focused on the things that matter to American families, like whether we can cut the healthy breast off your 15-year-old girl. Quote, addressing...
What? Holy shit, right out the gate. Literally 11 seconds in this video. And he's like, they want to focus on whether they can cut the healthy breasts off your 15-year-old. Like, what? I'm sorry, I'm actually stun locked on this. I don't understand. Like, he hasn't been saying anything. It's a separate segment of his shows, and he just immediately goes into that right away. Not prompted. There's not in reference to anything. He's not talking about a case. He just went right into propaganda. And then he's like, trans people want to cut the healthy breasts off here. And then now for my regular segment, I'm like, dude, you sound like a conspiracy nut. Holy shit.
Conversion therapy. As a candidate, President Biden pledged to help end so-called conversion therapy, a discredited and dangerous practice that seeks to suppress or change the sexual orientation or gender identity of LGBTQI plus people. Okay, so first of all, when you think conversion therapy, this is what the left loves to do. They like to take terms that actually have a meaning, and then they broaden that meaning to include a bunch of things that are not the original term, and then they try to go after it.
All right, hold on. We're going to fact check this motherfucker real fast. Sorry, I know I keep let's Wikipedia something, just because I think we should fact check people in real time. So he said the left is going to describe conversion therapy as something that is not relabel it, and then they're going to attack that. So it would be definitely a straw man, right? So let's read real quick. Conversion therapy, okay, is the pseudoscientific practice of attempting to change an individual's sexual orientation from homosexual or bisexual to heterosexual, or their gender identity from transgender to cisgender, using psychological, physical, or spiritual interventions. There is no reliable evidence that such practice can alter sexual orientation, gender identity, and medical institutions warned that conversion therapy is ineffective and potentially harmful. Medical, scientific, and government institutions in the United States and the United Kingdom have expressed concern over the validity, efficacy, and the ethics of conversion therapy. Jurisdictions around the world have passed laws against conversion therapy. American Psychiatric Association encourages legislation that would prohibit psychiatric treatment, quote, based on the a priori assumption that diverse sexual orientations and gender identities are mentally ill and should change, and describes attempts to change a person's sexual orientation by practitioners as unethical. So we go from there to the American Psychological Association. Substance abuse is also against it. They state that efforts to change an individual's sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression is a practice that's not supported by credible evidence, has been disavowed by behavioral health experts and associations. Conversion therapy perpetuates outdated views of gender roles and identities, as well as the negative stereotype that being asexual or gender minority or identifying as LGBTQ+ is an abnormal aspect of human development. Most importantly, it may put young people at serious risk of harm. Okay, so now that we have a good starting point for a definition, remember, Ben said that what we were going to do is we're going to relabel it, pretend it's something else than what it is, then we're going to attack that. So he said that we're going to straw man it, right out the gate. So let's see what he thinks we're going to say that it is. Dude.
Okay, so conversion therapy originally meant, and this is what you're thinking of when I say the words conversion therapy, somebody strapping electrodes to kids who might be gay, and then trying to essentially create a Pavlovian response that is anti-gay.
Did it say anything like that in that description? Or did it say practicing using psychological, physical, spiritual, social pressures? Now, you could say there are some cases that are fairly extreme of some type of electrodes being used, especially if you go back to institutions like in the 1950s and that sort of thing. But conversion therapy was going on long since then, and they were not always engaged in electrodes and that type of stuff. So I don't know, Ben, that sounds like maybe a straw man on your side. Maybe he'll shore it up though by saying that sure, there's psychological and social and emotional abuse and psychological abuse and spiritual abuse. Maybe he'll also give that part of it too.
Right?
Oh yeah, and the fact that it's discredited by every major medical organization across the fucking country.
Is what when people think conversion therapy, that's what they think. They think electroshock that is being applied to gay kids. That is not what this administration is talking about. They're talking about a kid comes in and is sexually confused, and the pastor or the psychologist or the psychiatrist talks to them about that without...
Or the medical professionals. Yeah, okay.
Saying, clearly you're gay and we should just celebrate. Or, clearly you're a member of the opposite gender. Yeah, that one is totally insane. So if a child comes in and says, I'm a member of the opposite gender, and the therapist says, you know what? You clearly have a biological sex. Let's talk about why you're feeling misaligned. And maybe we'll wait. Maybe we'll see if maybe these feelings persist. Or maybe we'll talk about what you can do to live comfortably inside your own body without, lopping off body parts, reconstructing genitals that don't properly function, and pumping you full of hormones that...
No. All right. So I'm going to go back just a little bit because there's a lot. There's like a gish gallop going on right there. So let's go back to
reconstructing genitals that don't properly function. Or maybe we'll talk about what you can do to live comfortably inside biological sex. Let's talk about why you're feeling misaligned. And maybe we'll wait. Maybe it says, I'm a member of the opposite gender. And the therapist says, you know what? You clearly have biological sex. Let's talk about why you're feeling
Okay. They do that. All right. They do that part where they say, okay, you're clearly feeling misaligned. There's something going on with you. Let's talk about it. And you know what they'll also probably say? They'll probably say there's a pretty high potential that this person might be trans, and they will investigate that with the child.
Misaligned. And maybe we'll wait.
Why would you wait? All right. The period that you're talking about waiting, by the way, and this is like what I said earlier, where it's a complete, like, just straw man this position. When I discussed earlier that you would say, okay, we socially transition from Matt Walsh bitching about it, right? When you have like a 4 or 5 year old that tells you this, so they start talking to the parents take them to see qualified professionals. The professionals are talking with them to find out how the child is identifying, and then they socially start transitioning, and that's all they do up until they enter the stage of puberty, specifically Tanner stage 2. So that's going to be about like 10 years old, 10 to 11 on average. So from the time of like, say, 5 to 6 up until 10, they've got like 4 to 5 years of socially transitioning, trying on clothing that feels better for them, talking with their parents, talking with multiple doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, whatever. They're going to be talking to loads of people. This is not something that they just arbitrarily do all at once.
Maybe we'll see if maybe these feelings persist.
They do that. That's called socially transitioning, Ben. They allow them to start using the new name and new pronouns, and they see how they like it. And if it persists, they go on puberty blockers. And guess what? As we know earlier, like 2.5% will desist and go back to just being cisgender.
Or maybe we'll talk about what you can do to live comfortably inside your own body without, lopping off body.
Yeah. Right, that's part of the socially transitioning part, Ben. They don't lop off any body parts. I don't know where you're getting this from. Like, you seem like, I know you're the facts over feeling. If you could just provide the facts of what you're saying, what kids are they lopping the body parts off of?
Parts, reconstructing genitals that don't properly function.
Oh, that genitals absolutely function. I mean, like, this is just flatly like a false claim, right? Because we know that people get reconstructive surgery done in accidents. We know that if they butcher your penis trying to do a circumcision, they can fix that as well. That they do, SRS on children that are just born in order to quote unquote fix intersex people to make sure that they live a regular life. They still are able to function. And I can like personally tell you, just from experience, I can tell you, trans bodies function perfectly fine after having SRS.
And pumping you full of hormones that may shorten your lifespan and or give you osteoporosis.
I know, right? Yeah, Tardis. It's almost like we say who we are. Exactly. It's so weird. It's like if you just give the kid a chance to socially transition and let you know what their pronouns are and how they identify. It seems like there's a 97.5% chance that even a very, very, very young child still gets this correct. And pumping them full of hormones. Once again, puberty blockers are not hormones. Puberty blockers stop hormones. I know this cretin wouldn't understand, but puberty dumps tons of hormones in your body. Puberty blockers stops that from happening. Then later on, after you've been socially transitioning forever, and you've been talking to your doctor, and you've been hopefully taking puberty blockers, eventually you can go on HRT at the appropriate age. It is not something like that just is rushed through by any means at all.
If you do that, if you say that as a psychologist, Joe Biden says that you are now engaging in conversion therapy. Today.
No. If you're engaging in what you're saying specifically, just tease out just portions of it, right? And this is what they're doing. He's leaving out a lot of this. If instead of doing what I was suggesting, socially transitioning and stuff, if you tell the child instead that they cannot socially transition, you're not going to use their correct pronouns, you are not going to allow them to use a name that is they feel better suited to, and you're going to continuously misgender them while you insist on telling them and lying to them that if they just wait long enough, it might desist. Well, we already fucking know that, yeah, 2.5% it will desist on average, but for the other 97.5%, you are tormenting them and you are increasing the chance that they self-harm. This is all well established. None of it is controversial, but the facts over feelings guy can't find a single fact to save his life when it comes to these issues. Instead, he has to obfuscate and flatly lie and say like, oh, well, this isn't conversion therapy, even though what you're doing is trying to change. You're holding out hope that if you just deny their identity, that it will just somehow magically change, or that they will get so run down by society and all the stigma surrounding them and constantly being persecuted about this, that they will change it. And if we go back to the conversion therapy, notice it said psychological, like emotional, physical, spiritual pressures to change their identity. It did not have to include electroshock or any kind of crazy crap like that. So yeah, under the way that Ben described it, it would be conversion therapy. I would say probably a softer form of it, because obviously there are places that will like tie you down and like literally torment you physically. But I don't see how this is an exemption from it. It's still a form of it, even if it's not as bad as electrodes on your ass.
Today, according to the White House, President Biden is using his executive authority to launch an initiative to protect children across America. It protects kids to prevent them from getting the medical care that they seek.
No. You're preventing them from getting the medical care that they seek, right? You're saying we want to do, and this is with absolutely no experts, no support. You're just saying that you would prefer to give them an alternate treatment beside the standard of care without giving a reason of why the standard of care ought not be followed. You're saying instead of path A, I think that they should go down path B, but you've never established why we should not let them go down path A, which seems to give them the best, most results. And it has a robust amount of data to back it up. We have lots of evidences, and we have lots of, long-term studies on this. At this point, we have everything that you could ask for to justify allowing these children to go down that road. But instead, you're saying they should do the thing that you want them to based on your ideology, not facts, not science, not data, none of it. You just feel that they ought be denied health care, and you're trying to flip it around, claiming that, once again, claiming that the real problem is that your method is being treated and recognized as the bigotry that it is.
And that the parents seek. And crack down on this harmful practice, which every major medical association in the United States has condemned. Well, actually, that's not true. Many medical associations have condemned, traditional conversion therapy because it's bad and ineffective and immoral. But that is not the kind of conversion therapy that you are talking about. Again, you've broadened out the term. Children.
No, you're trying to switch here. You're trying to say that conversion therapy, as long as it's only narrowly defined how you want to define it, but you still don't get away from the fact that you're still trying to change their identity by doing those things. And you're literally denying them healthcare. Right? Even denying them socially transitioning is a part of their healthcare that you are denying. So it doesn't matter whether you're like, well, it's not as bad as some of the other things. Who cares? You can have two decisions that are both unethical or both immoral or both abusive, even if one of them isn't as abusive as the other one. And this is that type of case where you say, well, we're not like, beating them or like, forcing them to do anything. You're just basically saying that through neglect, you hope to change them. Like, what?
Children who are exposed to so-called conversion therapy face higher rates of attempted suicide and trauma. Again, the data that he is attempting to cite here, no footnotes, I've noticed. Numerous states across the country have already passed bipartisan...
I'm sorry, do you have the data, Ben? Are you just going to, just claim that? You're just going to hand wave it, right? And just hope that your audience is never like, hey, Ben, can you give us a link to that data?
Laws to prevent exposure to so-called conversion therapy, with Republican and Democratic governors signing state bans on conversion therapy into law. Yet despite these efforts, many people in the United States and around the world are still subjected to this practice. Again, bans have been signed with regard to, electrifying kids. However, bans typically are a bad idea when you're talking about a kid questioning their sexual orientation or gender identity.
Do you think that he's right about that? Do you think that bans in place on electrifying children is true? Let's look this up real quick. Uh-oh. What is this? Abuse is not the answer. Shut down the Judge Rottenberg Center. So, if y'all don't know what the Judge Rottenberg Center is, then I'm here to give you a little bit of absolute depression and awfulness. In October, the National Disability Advocacy Organizer, ADAPT, organized a protest in front of the Judge Rottenberg Center in Canton, Massachusetts, over the center's use of adverse electric skin shocks on students and its care. More than 100 people came out to demand that the center stop the practice. Make no mistake, the use of electric shock is torture, and this torture has been allowed to go on because its victims are people with disabilities. The Rottenberg Center is a residential program for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and psychiatric disorders, is the only place in the United States that still practices it. So yeah, that uses a remote control. By the way, it's autism. They're trying to shock kids to stop being autistic, just so that you know. It used a remote control pack. I'm not even going to read this. It's disgusting. Every time I've looked at that stuff, it makes me cry. But just so that you know, whenever he says this is outlawed, this is illegal and all that shit, no, it's not. It is not outlawed. They still do it. I don't care if it's only one place in the country that's still fucking doing it. It's not true that it's illegal. It's just that places don't do it. They could start doing it again if people like Milo fucking Yiannopoulos has his way and opens those conversion camps in Florida. I have no doubt that those will be specifically there just to torment LGBT people.
And someone talking to them about it without immediately affirming everything that the kid believes. President Biden is now charging HHS with leading an initiative to reduce the risk of youth exposure to this dangerous practice. HHS will explore guidance to clarify that federally funded programs cannot offer so-called conversion therapy. Well, first of all, were federally funded programs regularly offering traditional electrode to genitals conversion therapy that I missed?
You know, it would be weird if people in his camp were wanting organizations like HUAC to be reformed, and we'll spend tons of money in there and create a special counsel to investigate Americans by being LGBT. I'm sure nobody on the right says stuff like that. Oh wait, fuck.
President Biden is also encouraging the FTC to consider whether the practice constitutes an unfair or deceptive act.
Good night, TARDIS. Thank you for stopping by and enjoying some tormenting entertainment with me.
Act or practice, and whether to issue consumer warnings or notices. He's directing the Secretaries of State, Treasury, and HHS to develop an action plan to promote an end to so-called conversion therapy around the world and ensure that U.S. foreign assistance dollars do not fund the practice. So yes to funding abortion all over the world.
What? This has nothing to do with abortion, Ben. Nothing. This is literally the moralist fallacy, okay? The very fact that he can't say, okay, there are multiple things that are bad and that we should address those multiple bad things at the same time. Also, a version of the perfect solution fallacy or fucking nirvana fallacy, okay? This is a huge issue, Ben. This is one of the dumbest things that you could ever have done here, okay? Abortion is no part of this conversation, never been a part of it. Why are you trying to insert it? Because once again, right-wingers cannot help but conflate everything they don't like into they have to constantly remind you of all the other things that you need to be against and that you need to listen to him about and that you need to champion his causes. So not only is he going to downplay harm done to LGBT people through conversion therapy, he's then going to say, well, they don't do electric shock therapy to your genitals anymore. But then whenever Biden says that not only do they want to make sure that harmful practices in the United States are not continuing as they once did, and we know that it was once a common practice, we're going to stop that and make sure it doesn't happen in this country anymore. We're also going to make sure that the countries that we're giving aid to are not engaging in this type of conversion therapy, when surely in some of the other countries, they are probably still engaged in conversion therapy if it's still legal there, as we would have been engaging it over here, where they would have done some possibly more nefarious things. And for him to say like, that's not an issue. That's not the real issue. The real issue is abortion. Like, get fucked, Ben. We're not talking about that. Why do you have to like smuggle it into this conversation just so that you can moralize?
No to funding psychologists overseas who are dealing with kids who are gender confused without immediately declaring they're a member of the opposite gender and it's time to chop off a really.
No one over here says, oh, you just say that you're a member of the opposite gender. We better rush off and chop off your junk. That's not how, first of all, I don't chop it off. But beyond that, they're also not giving these anyone that is that young that surgery. It just doesn't happen.
Really strong stuff here from the Biden administration. Standing up for the things that matter for not only children here, but children around the world. And sort of NatCon, the nationalist conservative critique of the liberal governance of the United States is that that basically it used to be that when America would drop a bomb on a foreign nation, have an American flag on it. Now, what the left has basically done is if they stick a gay pride flag on the bomb, they'll drop the same bomb, but declare it virtuous.
I mean, you literally are just doing the meme. Like, this is not even, like, this is such low effort shit here. Literally, he's just describing a meme. I wish that I could make as much money as he does, just sitting around and be like, hey, this is like that one meme, and then describe it without everybody being like, oh my God, Zoe, you're such a boomer, and then just unsubscribing. Fuck this dude.
And hard to see where the meme is particularly wrong when it comes to Joe Biden at this point. So what else is he doing? Because of discrimination and bullying, nearly half of LGBTQI plus youth seriously considered suicide last year. Again, a lie. Okay, the idea that the high suicidal ideation rate among kids of alternative sexual identity and gender ideology, that this suicide rate is driven primarily by bullying and discrimination, it's a lie. The data do not back this up.
The data actually do back that up, and it's mostly a social stigma pressuring on them and people abusing them, specifically family members not being supportive like their mother and their father. But then, yeah, constant abuse from society would kind of like wear away at your mental health. And for somebody who has once acknowledged that the Jewish community has lots of like generational trauma still from like World War II and what happened there. Then you had to dodge the question when somebody said, well, wouldn't that apply also to Black communities? For somebody who dodged that, it seems like you understand perfectly fine that generational trauma can cause populations to feel the ramifications of what was done to them decades after the events happened. But then when it comes to LGBT people in our community specifically, you don't pretend that not only do we not face like any issues, not only is conversion therapy like just a joke to you, but you also will never acknowledge that we have generational trauma within our communities as well. And it's like, you want to pretend like that would not affect us at all, as well as being like disowned by our parents, disowned by our family members, losing like friendships, and losing like having to like leave school because we no longer have a support system, having difficulty finding a job because people that are, finding out that we're LGBT in the workplace might end up getting us fired, especially if we live in a rural area. So it can be difficult for us to maintain housing and maintain. Yeah, Ben, it's not like people just said some mean words and that's what causes the suicide rates to be higher within the LGBT community. It's actually people like you doing the thing that you do, trying to stoke up fear about people like us that causes other conservatives to then like, go and fire us from jobs or be suspicious that we're all pedophiles for some fucking reason, or that we want to like chop up kids or something, which is a very strange avenue of attack for you to take, considering that the history of people making false allegations against your community. But of course, you have like to say that you are a hypocrite would almost be a compliment to you instead of what you actually are. And what a good pause screen right there, right?
In the most tolerant areas of the country, where, by the way, the rates of identification in this broader rubric are now extraordinarily high, right? They are centralized in very specific locations with very specific ideologies. The suicidal ideation rates remain incredibly high because, as it turns out, certain types of identification and certain types of activity are highly associated with suicidal ideation, regardless as to whether mom and dad give you the thumbs up or the thumbs down. LGBTQI plus people of all ages, says the Biden administration, also face significant barriers to accessing healthcare and health disparities. To safeguard access to healthcare for LGBTQ plus I minus patients and address the LGBTQI plus youth mental health crisis, President Biden is charging HHS
Yeah, like whenever Texas was trying to get rid of the LGBTQ plus suicide hotline, or whenever DeSantis just tried to they just passed some legislation in Florida to remove a lot of trans healthcare from medical packages that were offered in the state of Florida. Yeah, it's almost like conservatives once again wielding state power against LGBT people is not an issue to Ben. The real issue is other government agencies trying to step in and stop that, or trying to find some way to undo the damage that other agencies were doing.
With taking steps to address the barriers and exclusionary policies that individuals and families face in accessing quality, affordable, comprehensive healthcare, including mental health care, reproductive health care, and HIV prevention and treatment. The president's order charges HHS to work with states to promote expanded access to gender-affirming care. That's right. Now the federal government is going to be subsidizing your states to give your kids a bunch of cross-sex hormones.
Good. Like, how long our community has suffered in having access to healthcare, and then you're like, oh my God, they're going to do something to give them some type of access to some extra healthcare. Yeah. And it's just like, what is your problem? First, like, of all the things that he could be mad about, of all the things that he could be doing activism for in this world, like, whether it's like climate change, whether it's like feeding the hungry, all the different causes that he could take, he wants to die on the hill that trans people getting health care is the main issue. And I just don't understand how conservatives listen to this and then think like, oh, this is a perfectly rational stance to take. That, what really bothers me in my life is whenever I hear about the state trying to step in and help take care of people, which is like, it's so funny because he did this whole concern trolling there for a second when he's like, oh, I just worry about the mental state of these people. I worry about, the suicide rates of trans people. But then when it comes to the government trying to step in to offer like suicide hotlines or to offer mental health services to LGBT people, he's automatically against that. So he's upset that he just thinks that there's some reason that we just have a higher suicide rate, but then he does not want us to have access to like, say, suicide hotlines, but yet he says nothing when like the state of Texas goes and removes their hotline project. Like, what the fuck? He doesn't care as long as it's stuff that like is a detriment to our community, but he will absolutely not support or tolerate any type of help to the community while he's simultaneously criticizing the community for having a higher suicide rate. Like, it, from using his own rationale, it doesn't make sense of why he would oppose all of these things at the same time. There's definitely some compartmentalization going on.
Are you excited? Joe Biden is. I mean, let's be real. He's not really excited about this. He doesn't know what's going on. He's got a bunch of idiot interns from Wellesley.
All right. So if it's turning to just the anti-Biden stuff, I think he's just moving on from his points. And quite frankly, I'm tired of seeing his face.
Tell me pretty lies, look me in the face. Tell me that you love me, even if it's fake.